Call the meeting to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome you all to the Board of Commissioners meeting. Remind you, this is a public meeting and records are being kept of the proceedings. I don't believe we have any awards, recognition, or correspondence this morning, do we?
I have none.
No.
We have minutes of the April 10th meeting.
We have the minutes of the April 10th meeting. Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Additions to the agenda, I like to add an item 12A, lip-sync coordination. It will come to. Do want to remind you that Doug Olson, our legal counsel, is on vacation, and so we will be stumbling along as best we can in his absence because he normally coordinates our meetings. So
Meet the new Doug Olson right here.
Commissioner Elfring will be doing what he can to shuffle the papers. Is there anybody who wishes to address a topic that is not on our agenda? All right, we'll move into our business items. Item number 1 is road vacation presentation.
Mr. Chair, this county has received a petition from property owners for the vacation of Southwest S Avenue in Westland Estates. All of the adjoining property owners signed the petition, so action can be taken without the need of a public hearing. The unimproved road does not serve any purpose and is overrun with weeds. The department is recommending vacation, and the requested action is to adopt order RD 2019-11.
Is anybody going to speak on it?
I can if you'd like.
Sure.
Matt Kenny, Umatilla County Public Works Department. I did have a short slideshow. Maybe we'd pull that up just real quickly. I know. Cause problems.
Yes.
But Southwest S Avenue, it's a public road right-of-way located just west of Agnew Road outside the city of Hermiston. We had, as Bill said, a petition to vacate that right-of-way signed by 100% of the adjoining owners. It is infested with weeds. There's a small driveway that currently accesses the public right-of-way that's used by the southerly property. Here you can see that the approximate location of it is shown in red. For those who aren't familiar, it's just south of Westland Agnew intersection. Next slide. This is the plat that it was dedicated in. This is Westland Estates. Shown there in red, Southwest S Avenue. It's a 50-foot road right-of-way, 1972 plat. It's been in existence since then, but not really in use since then. We'll keep it at this slide for a while. This is the one that kind of shows all the details. It's as I said, it's a 50-foot public road right-of-way, dedicated in 1972. There's 3 adjoining owners: Jeff and Shelley Darcy to the north, Dean Cherry to the south, and Margaret Gass to the west. The east side is bounded by County Road number 1239 Agnew Road. All those adjoining owners signed the petition. One issue that we did run into when we were looking at this was that there's some encroachments on the south side with a garage. There's an outbuilding that's completely within the right-of-way and fence lines. So that really was a determining factor of public interest to vacate it, to return that issue back to the landowner. They could then construct their fences on the center of the right-of-way, and that would no longer be a problem. We did verify with county planning that it's in conjunction with their plans. They have no issues with the vacation. We have also verified that there are no public utilities in the right-of-way. So with that, the Public Works Department would recommend that the road be vacated based on those facts and return the 0.4 acres back to the tax rolls.
So that garage you're talking about, that's in the middle of the screen there, right?
Correct.
And then there's an outbuilding to the west of it. It looks like it's completely in.
Yeah, it's then the far west. It's a very small building. That one there. It's complete within the right of way.
And so we would be vacating the right-of-way, and then there would be split in half, and half would go one direction, half would go the other.
Correct. So the northerly, the Darcy parcel to the north would recoup 25 feet, and then the Cherry parcel to the south would recoup that 25 feet, and their parcel lines would extend to the center line.
Any idea historically why that was designated as right-of-way?
There were some future additions planned to the west side where that circle is. There were some future subdivisions planned. Actually, Margaret Gass, the owner of that parcel, was the original subdivider of that area. She was the original landowner of that subdivision. And so they had planned to extend that subdivision westerly. And so S Avenue was going to provide public access to Agnew Road via extension of those developments. But that never happened, and they're not planning to do that. In addition, that's zoned, I believe it's EFU, and maybe a portion of it might be light industrial also. So it's not very likely that would ever happen.
Have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of Order RD 2019-11.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Item number 2, Airport Road.
Mr. Chairman, this matter is before us. Anderson Perry is in the process of finalizing design for Airport Road. And based on the fact that a portion of the right-of-way has been impacted in one form or the other by adjoining property owners, the board is aware that there may be a need to work with individual property owners in an attempt to mitigate the impact wherever possible based upon varying circumstances. In order to assure the voices of individual property owners be heard and that their specific interests and needs are addressed, the proposal is to have representatives from Anderson Perry, the road department, and a commissioner meet with any interested individual property owners on an appointment basis. Possible measures would include location of utilities, possible easements for items encroaching on the road right-of-way, relocation of fences, or any other relevant issues that might need to be discussed. The matter is before the board for discussion and approval. The request is to approve a plan for engineer, a county road representative, a commissioner, and others deemed necessary to meet with individual property owners adjacent to Airport Road.
Mr. Fellows.
Tom Fellows, Public Works Director. So we have some representatives from Anderson Perry here today. They emailed me the draft plans for the project late yesterday afternoon. And I believe they have some copies with them for the commissioners, and I'm sure we can answer any questions you may have about this. So.
Okay.
What would you like to hear?
Do you have a presentation plan, or do you want us to ask questions?
We've got a set of draft plans for you to look at if you'd like.
Okay.
But really, we're here to answer questions.
Why don't you come up with Tom there? And identify yourself for our record, please.
Chaz Hutchins with Anderson Perry. I'm the design engineer for the airport out-road improvements. And so we, like Tom said, we sent over a draft set of plans yesterday for you to look at. I've got 3 hard copies for each one of you here, and we nothing's changed from the last time we met. We just kind of furthered the design, but all the components that we talked about before are in the plan. And we've just kind of honed in and put together a striping plan and demolition plan and improvement plan for the improvements along the roadway, including adjusting existing fences to the edge of the right-of-way. And so that currently is part of the plan, as we can, and we'll get you a copy of this. But for now, if you have questions, we'd be more than happy to answer those if you have any.
So the right-of-way, is not being changed It's not being extended any one direction or another to encroach or not encroach on property.
Correct.
And utilities?
Utilities, we've contacted the UEC and also CenturyLink, who both have utilities that run along Airport Road. And we've had some preliminary discussions about moving those utilities to the north side of the road because some of the encroachment or some of the property owners that have concerns are mainly on the south side of the road. And so we're talking to those utilities about possibly moving those to the north side and getting it away from some of those property boundaries.
What was the outcome of those conversations?
UEC seemed like of course, they want to see a preliminary set of drawings, but preliminarily they didn't think that would be a problem. CenturyLink, when we talked to them, they wouldn't commit one way or the other, but they said once they had a set of draft drawings that they would be able to look into that further and see if that would be a doable thing for them. Ultimately, I think the county could require them to do that, but we're hoping that they come to that on their own accord.
And in that design, then utilities would normally be on the county right away?
They will be, yeah. Either way, whether we're north or south of the roadway improvements, it'll be within the right-of-way.
The last time we met, when you showed us the preliminary plans, it seemed to me that some of the anticipated negative impacts probably may not come to pass, and I think that's one of the things that we've talked about is, and one of the reasons we have sought to come up with a plan where this team would actually go. I don't know that Commissioner Elfring mentioned that, but the plan is for this team to actually go to every individual property. We're not talking about having meetings here. We're talking about where you're standing in front of that piece of property, and saying, okay, this is what it looks like, and with every individual property owner. And if they have specific concerns, if their drain field, for example, extends into the right-of-way but doesn't impact the road, the county has the authority to just say, we'll make an exception. Isn't that correct? And in the same way, if there's a fence, it could be moved to a reason. But it seemed, I can't say it wouldn't have some impact on property owners, but I would like to think that if you were meeting with every individual property owner on the road, that in most cases, probably pretty well going to be able to mitigate the impact, are you not?
Conversations that I had with Chaz on the phone, we discussed that, and I think we were both in agreement on the meeting with the property owner actually on site to give them a good visual representation of what it was going to look like would probably help ease a lot of those concerns.
Yeah, it's somewhat unprecedented to do this. I'm not familiar. You usually just go ahead and do it, but it would seem to me that from what I can understand, if you're willing to go out and meet with every individual property owner and let them be heard and let their interests be represented, that we're probably going to, I don't think we could say there'll be no impact, but it could be lessened. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think it will probably surprise them how minimal the impacts will probably be on that south side when they can actually get some sort of visual representation of what's going on there.
Well, I drove it again yesterday and trying to get a picture of what it would be like, and the fact that we realize that some things have infringed on the right-of-way, but we also know that, as we've said publicly, there's things happening on the right-of-way all over the county. If we didn't let people farm on the right-of-way, our weed control costs would be very handy, or very large, but
Significant.
well, yeah, the farmers farm on the right-of-way, but they also control the weeds. But I don't think any of them think they own the property now.
No.
Do you foresee or estimate any changes on the north side? Any major impact or any impact, I guess?
think the north
No.
side is pretty consistent all the way through.
Okay.
When do you think you would have these meetings?
As soon as possible.
Yeah.
Within the next month, hopefully, we can get out and get those scheduled. And I think, I think it's a productive way to hear the concerns of each property owner and also give us a chance to explain, where things are going to be exactly and really hone in on what their concerns are and what we might do to mitigate that or reduce it to the extent possible.
And some of these meeting schedules are gonna rely on when we can get the commissioner and the public works and Anderson Perry's schedules all line up, but sooner than better, sooner than later.
Sometimes kind of like herding a bunch of cats, isn't it?
So as I understand it, somebody from the road department would be there, a commissioner would be there, Anderson Perry would be there, and what if a property owner said, well, I'd like to be represented or have somebody here? I assume they,
Up to them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be on their property.
They can invite anybody they want.
Sure.
sure. Who would keep a record of those interactions?
Well, we'd plan on taking notes during the meeting, and then we could submit a summary of those visits to the commissioners or to Tom, either way. Just kind of to record kind of what the concerns were and what we talked about and any solutions that were identified.
Yeah, I think it'd be essential to us, and I think we probably would be required to have a written record of what concerns were raised, what you discussed, and certainly if any agreements were suggested, we'd want that in a matter of record.
Yeah, and that was part of the agreement that Anderson Perry had with the county was to do public outreach and make sure that property owners were aware of or anything that the county wanted us to do in that regard, within reason, of course. But I think this is definitely within the scope that we discussed. So.
Were there big changes from what we saw when you were here a few weeks ago versus what you brought today? Okay.
There's none. We basically presented more of a conceptual design to you last time. This has the specifics as far as what mailboxes need moved, what fences need relocated to edge right away, what trees would potentially be coming out, and so it has more of the details. But conceptually, as far as the road, the lane widths, and where we transition from 3 lanes to 2 lanes, and all of that stuff, that hasn't changed at all.
Tom, could you forward that email to the three of us, please? Thank you.
And for the for the public benefit, could you summarize when you might anticipate construction?
Well, at this point, I think conversations that we've had, I believe we're looking at a next. It would be late winter, early spring of 2020 is when we would be looking at construction on this project.
So not by fair time.
No, it's not. At this point, there is no way it can happen between now and fair.
When would you move the power poles?
That would be as soon as possible.
Yeah.
After when the power company could get in there and do it. But that also gives them an extended window to schedule the movement of the utilities.
But that conceivably could happen before the fair even.
The power poles could conceivably be moved before the fair. That's kind of up to them.
This is not something you may be prepared to answer, but I understand that a motel has been proposed for, I never can remember if that's South Airport Road or East Airport Road. What do you call it?
Well, it'd be
Both.
East Airport Road, I think, is what it would be. But it's back in there, and I haven't seen all the drawings on that yet as to where they were. I haven't seen anything firm on where they're going to access yet, and I've had 2 separate conversations on that, so I don't have any any good input on their access point.
Well, I thought since their address was Airport Road, it's probably something we want to weave into the equation before we did anything.
Certainly. Yeah, well, it would be something that we'd want to take into consideration when we're laying out the approaches and access points.
Well, don't you have some regulations about where they can access it
There's that.
based on the highway?
Yeah, there is that. They've got spacing standards off from the highway, and then we also have spacing standards within the county.
Okay,
I have nothing further.
okay. I'll ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to speak on this matter. Okay,
Was there a motion?
no?
I would move to approve the procedure of meeting with the property owners at the site with the representative of our engineering company, a representative of Public Works, and the county commissioner.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you much, and thank you for coming. And where are you going to leave those?
I'll get you a copy.
Tom, I've got a gravel pit contract next
Yeah.
on the agenda, but I don't have a copy of that
Thank you
here.
very much.
That's because it didn't come in until, we didn't close
Okay,
until Monday, and I have it with me.
okay, very good. Then you'll be next up on the agenda with a gravel pit contract.
Okay, we went out for quotes for drilling and blasting of a rock quarry north of town, out off from Helix Holman Road. It's county-owned property. It's referred to as the Ingdahl Pit. We received one response for the drilling and blasting from Rhino Works, Inc., out of McCall, Idaho. They submitted us 3 prices based on what the plan ends up being on site. If the drill holes are 12 feet or less, it's $2.95 per cubic yard. 16-foot holes are $2.65 per cubic yard. 24-foot holes are $2.50 per cubic yard. The worst case scenario would be the smaller holes, and that would come to a $44,250 would be the worst case scenario that we're looking at based on the drilling and blasting. Currently, we're recommending that we give Rhino Works the contract for drilling and blasting.
What determines the distance on the holes? You said
The depth?
separation.
Oh, the separation is they're drilled on 8-foot centers, so eight.
But it's the
foot-
depth that
it's
they
the
would,
depth- it's
that makes the
depth-
difference here.
Yeah, it's the depth that makes the difference. The deeper the hole, the fewer the holes they have to do, the quicker it's less moving around from station to station. So it costs, the shallower the hole, the more it costs, because it takes longer. That's kind of backwards of what you would think it would be, but the fact of the matter is the deeper the holes, you can do it a little bit cheaper on the drilling.
So what determines how deep?
What determines it in this case is this is a quarry that probably wasn't drilled and mined correctly. So what we're having to do is we're having to do some straightening out of the pit, and we're going to establish a bottom floor grade, and therefore we actually determined, based on the topography, the hole depths, so that we could establish a good floor on this pit. So my suspicion is we're looking at the higher number, the $44,000 number for this project, because it's we have to get things back to where it can be well managed and well maintained, and right now it's not there.
This gravel will be for county use?
Yes, this is going to be chip seal rock that we're going to crush out of this quarry site. So we'll have enough chip seal rock for a number of years out in that area.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize contract for drilling and blasting for Engdahl gravel pit.
Up to?
The worst case scenario.
$2.95 per cubic yard.
Yep, that one.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. I believe you have item 4 as well.
Which one is that one?
Reader board.
Purchase.
The reader board. Okay. So, Public Works Department is before you asking authorization to purchase 2 reader boards. These would be vehicle-mounted reader boards. We use them frequently in our chip sealing and our paint striping and our paving operations, and then they come in really handy during emergency operations when you have trees down and different things out there. They're primarily an added safety feature to our folks being out there on the roadway working. These reader boards would be purchased off from state contract, and for a total of $23,186.56.
Mr. Chair, move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are you the equipment purchase also? Okay. All right.
So, okay.
On a run.
Yeah.
Does he have a plaque up there yet?
This may be the last one for me for today, I hope.
I don't know who has the garlic mustard project payable.
Yeah. So, primarily, what this is before you is every year when we build our budget, we put together an equipment list of what we're going to be looking for the following year. Once we've gone through budget hearings, we come before the board with that equipment list so that we know that things are on schedule, which are, I've heard from Robert that it appears that our budget is going to move forward to the board for acceptance as it stands. This list, what we will do then is this will give us the ability to go out for RFPs when we see equipment become available. It saves a couple of weeks in the process, and sometimes that's the difference between getting a piece of equipment at a good rate or not. And so the equipment on the list, there's actually more equipment there in my estimation than we're going to get for the $1.8 million, but our intent is obviously never to spend more than the $1.8 million. Sometimes we pick and choose what we buy and then hold some equipment over for the next year based on the budget. So
I'd like to point out that my helicopter is not on the list.
Oh.
So.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of order RD 2019-10.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 thank you, gentlemen.
How about the garlic mustard project payable?
That is Teddy, and I believe that was just a payable. It was a contracted amount, and that came in above the dollar amount that necessary, and so the dollar amount for the payable needs to be approved by the board.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That gave you a record number of items. All right. Item number 6, Enterprise Fleet Management. Robert, you want to speak to that?
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Paul, CFO. We have been in discussion with upgrading our fleet management process and been in discussion with Enterprise Fleet Management. They offer a fleet management service. We've been in discussion with them now for probably close to 18 months. They have a contract through, I believe, Sourcewell, which will allow us to contract with them. And at this point, I believe that it would be prudent for us to at least move forward and start that process. So that's what I believe is a authorization to contract with them so that we can move forward.
We actually have the enterprise guy here too. I think I saw him sneak in. There he is. Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add today?
Not unless you have any questions.
Just so you know, he is here in case we had questions from him. He's the enterprise representative.
Commissioner Schaefer, could you tell us how many cars you counted and how many employees use those cars?
If what I did was I took away the road department and the sheriff's office because they're both their own animal. So that being said, there's 133 employees and 104 vehicles, and so I'm hoping to trim that down. Not the employees, but the vehicles. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. So. And I think I gave you that list that I came up with, didn't I, Robert?
Yes, I have it. Thank you.
Okay, so.
It'll be really interesting as we go forward, to find out how many of those cars are really necessary to be out parked across the street.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, the snowstorm was fortuitous because Robert went out during the snowstorm to determine, it was clear to see which had been moved and which hadn't. Found a number that hadn't. So
I think they still haven't been moved.
still be there. But I think it makes sense to operate it more efficiently. I think the other thing is we have been talking about this for 18 months, and I think the time is clearly here to move forward.
With that, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve an agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management and authorize the chair to sign any necessary contracts.
I would second that motion.
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I would like to add, I feel like moving forward, it's going to require a change of county culture as far as how we use and allocate vehicles. I think that will be a move to optimize our investment.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 7, Umatilla Enterprise Zone.
For background, the city of Umatilla is in the process of submitting an application for a new enterprise zone to cover only the city limits and the urban growth boundary for the city, and not include any areas with the city of Stanfield and Echo as currently exists. The county was a co-sponsor of the original enterprise zone and the expanded Greater Umatilla Enterprise Zone. The city has sent an email with proposed consent forms for the new zone for the City Council and Port of Umatilla, and expressed hope that the county would provide consent for the new zone. The port, as of at least this writing, has not yet taken action on the request based on the benefits of new development incentivized by the zone, and also on the past history of co-sponsorship and the protection it provides the county. Staff recommends the board agree to co-sponsor the zone. And the requested action is to adopt Order BCC 2019-0353.
Council isn't here. Do you have additional comment?
No, I think at this point I'd like to hear from the public if anybody,
Okay.
the city's here.
Okay.
Commissioners, good morning. I'm Dave Stockton. I'm the city manager for the city of Umatilla. Thank you very much for considering the item before you today regarding the Umatilla Enterprise Zone. So just a little bit, I think your summary does a good job. I'll give a little bit more background there with the Enterprise Zone. So originally 10 years ago, as the zone were created, the state has since passed and made quite a few updates on how Enterprise Zones can be created, how they can be managed, and so on. There used to be a finite amount that were allowed throughout the state, and so back 10 years ago, it made a lot of sense for enterprise zones to team up with other cities. And in our case, we're a small city with not a lot going on. We still are a small city, so we had partnered with Stanfield and Echo and co-sponsored with the county. Similar zones exist at that time too. 10 years ago, Milton Freewater had theirs. Pendleton joined up with Pilot Rock, and City of Hermiston created their own. Certainly some things have changed since then. The state has updated. Now there is no limit to enterprise zones. Just update to the process. There just needs to be either consent or co-sponsors for the organizations that are creating the zone. And I guess I would say that, so that's part of the issue there with that. We've gone through our process, and we've met with Stanfield, met with ECHO, talked about how the cities have changed and matured over the last 10 years, and the cities mutually agree that it makes sense for the city of Umatilla to move forward as our own enterprise zone, and the city has offered to both Stanfield and ECHO that should they want to develop their own, that we're offering them staff at no cost, our community development department, to assist them with that process, to help them with what they need should they desire to do so. We're seeking consent rather than what you have here as co-sponsor, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, the city has grown, and our economic development in the city has been quite successful within the last 5 to 7 years or so. We've had, as you're well aware, we have data centers there. We have several other folks that are talking to us quite often, and there's a lot of interest. We were the second largest housing growth last year in the county, beating the city of Pendleton by 1 permit. But it's significant for us to have that, and we're on par to see our residential growth continue to grow. I mention that only because our industrial partners and commercial partners, one of the things they're looking at are housing starts as they move forward, as they're looking to locate. The other thing they look at is the economic development tool of an enterprise zone. And as you know, this if they meet the criteria and the check boxes are checked, they're guaranteed a tax break for the first 3 years, which could be extended for an additional 2. We're seeking to be the sole sponsor of the zone with consent from the port and from the county, so that we have the ability to negotiate with these potential businesses individually, to be able to make those decisions that we see as best for the city of Umatilla, and try to be able to move forward in what may end up being creative negotiations, and want to be able to do that individually and one-on-one. Some of the feedback we've received from some folks that have been interested is that can sometimes, not necessarily here, but in other places they've been through the state, sometimes things can get convoluted, or things can slow down or get a little bit murky if they're dealing with more than one entity as they're trying to negotiate. We met last week with the Port of Umatilla. This was on their agenda for consent. They've given some direction to their executive director, and since he and I have met, and it's going to be on their agenda for June 4th, and for all intents and purposes, we fully expect them to issue their consent on June 4th. There were just a few things in the language they wanted us to clean up, and so we've are looking to, or some other issues that they wanted us to clarify, and we've been able to work through that. So we're here looking for consent from the county. Just for your reference, you are co-sponsors with City of Hermiston Enterprise Zone. You've issued consent for Pendleton Pilot Rock Enterprise Zone. So we're asking the same thing that you've done with the City of Pendleton, which is just be a consent to the zone rather than a co-sponsor. And we've gone through, like I said, we went through the process. We met with the special districts. They didn't really give us, they gave some great feedback. There wasn't really any concerns that were brought up that they wouldn't be able to support it. One of the things that was interesting that came up is from the fire district, that regardless of what happens with Enterprise Zone, they're on day one of any new organization showing up, they're responsible to provide fire, life, and safety protection. And so they're looking to see if there's opportunities where should an Enterprise Zone be awarded to, the benefits of Enterprise Zone be awarded to any individual business the city work through either the community service fee or other ways in which that they might be able to be compensated during that first initial 3-year period, so that they can cover some of their costs associated with providing those services. And we are definitely open to that, but those are things that need to be, those are ILAs that are taken care of outside of the Enterprise Zone. So really the question is quite simple, is should the city, and through consent with you and the port, be able to provide this economic development tool to our area? And the answer is yes. So we hope we can get your consent. If the answer is no, we'd like to hear what those concerns might be, and we can try to work through that.
Question. The enterprise zone is used to attract new industry, new business, new commerce into the area. And generally, it's an agreement that's made with that organization, with that company or enterprise, in lieu of taxes. In other words, they don't pay city's taxes or county taxes or the special district taxes when they enter into a enterprise zone agreement. The second largest tax collector in Umatilla is Umatilla County. Only a few cents less per thousand than the city's tax rate is, which means that for 3 to 5 years, the county receives nothing from the enterprise zone, where normally in a sponsored enterprise zone, the county being, again, one of the larger taxing organizations within that district, receives that and then spreads that use, some in the local area and some outside the local area in the county, and helps meet the needs of the general citizenship. For that reason, we're not, in this case, in position to receive anything out of the enterprise zone. Is that right?
For the first 3 years as a consent, that's correct.
5?
Or it could be extended to 5, correct, yes. And it's saying, like I said, it's the same organizations or same agreement you have with the Pendleton Enterprise Zone.
And are you familiar with the change that's occurring there?
They haven't even started updating theirs yet, we've learned this week. So they're on a streamlined process to move forward with that.
I think as a matter of record, point out that the city of Pendleton and I don't know where Pilot Rock is into the equation, but they're on the verge of updating their enterprise zone, and I believe we've already formally notified them that we will co-sponsor the next one. We will not consent to the next one as a matter of record. I believe they've been told that. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So, Commissioner Schaefer?
I was going to bring up the consent thing and co-sponsorship with Pendleton as well. The one thing that I don't think you mentioned was is Paul still in the room? Is it House Bill 2408? Is that the right one? Yeah, 2408. Are you familiar with that one?
For the prevailing wage inside the enterprise zone?
Yeah, inside enterprise zones. And if that passes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't that pretty much null and void the benefits of it would not?
So the short answer is it definitely will have an impact, and I think it's a significant impact. So much so the League of Oregon Cities has come out in open opposition to the proposal. The city of Umatilla has taken a formal stance in opposition to it. From what we understand, it seems to have the legislative backing that we think that it's probably going to pass. Those businesses that are certainly on that threshold, I believe it's 50 million on that threshold. It's going to. I think it's going to knock them out. So at this point, it really seems to me, and this is anecdotal, of course, but unless they're building, significant 100 million plus facilities, it may wash it out completely. Where this economic development tool may not actually be beneficial at all with that.
Probably comes down to what the company is doing. If they're expanding, they have to. If they feel a need to expand, they have to expand someplace, whether that's in the city of Umatilla or whether that's in the city of Pendleton or whether it's in the city of Richland. That bill doesn't create very much inequity among the states that surround us, with the exception of Idaho, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. Yeah. We, as we're looking to attract new business into the city, one of the things that came up, part of the reason with Stanfield and Echo is there has to be a designated manager of the zone, and that's historically been the city of Umatilla, and though it never really came up during this initial 10-year period, the area is growing. We anticipate that there's lots of folks interested out here, and we didn't want to get into a situation where both Stanfield or Umatilla are trying to both do outreach and recruitment of perhaps the same business, and it could have caused a conflict. And so looking at that, we tried to, and they agreed with that as well, that it makes a lot of sense to move forward separately. I'll tell you, under the direction of my council, they're not interested in co-sponsorship, and should the county not give consent, our next step for this moving forward would be to just update the boundaries to include only inside city limits and move forward with the consent of the port, which we've got confirmation from them that they intend to consent. And so that meets the criteria of the enterprise zone.
If I heard you correctly, you'd simply annex all of the property within the urban growth boundary?
Not annexation. We would change the proposal right now for the enterprise zone, which includes the UGB, to the enterprise zone boundaries to be only inside city limits. No annexation there, just inside city limits as far as the boundaries of the zone.
Well, in the same manner that your council feels the way they do, we have some feelings about the property that is not the city of Umatilla, but Umatilla County.
Well, this is only for the city limits and the UGB. We're not proposing outside the UGB.
Yeah, but there is some significant county property within the UGB. Commissioner Schaefer, anything else? Questions?
No, he's answered my questions.
Commissioner Elfrin?
I've got mine satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have the document. What's the proposed action?
The proposed action is adopt order BCC 2019-0353. And Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8, Oregon Water Resources Contract.
The background on this, Mr. Chair, is beginning on July 2017, the county has contributed funding to Oregon Water Resources Department to provide staffing for Milton Freewater area. The amount of funding has been $100,000 per fiscal year. The same amount of funding is proposed for the 2019-20 fiscal year. The intergovernmental agreement with the department for funding is before the board for approval, and the requested action is to approve agreement with OWRD and authorize the chair to sign.
Mr. Chair, I've been talking with the gentleman in front of us, and one of the things that, well, I'd probably better just let you explain it. You do a lot better at it, so.
Chair Murdoch, County Commissioners, thanks. Mike Ladd, Oregon Water Resource Department. So our discussions with Commissioner Schaefer have been as a result of some comments we're getting from some of the water users over in Milton Freewater. What can be done to kind of solidify that position? One of the challenges we are having with a one-year contract is when we have to recruit that position, it's recruited as a limited duration position. And so with that, there's some uncertainty for the staff to get in those positions, and it's been shown that they're not sticking around very long. So I asked our budget person in Salem, what would it take to solidify that so we could have it remove that limited duration tag. And they said if we could work with the county, if they would be agreeable to start discussions on a 3-year contract, and then we could remove that limited duration tag on that recruitment position and give a little more sustainability to that position.
So we've funded this for how many years at this level?
Well, we funded it at this level only about 2 or 3 years.
3, according to Robert.
Robert?
This is the start of the 3rd year coming up.
Okay. To me, it makes sense to have, and I understand where they're coming from. They can't keep staff there because the staff is looking at the limited duration. Now there's uncertainty of whether or not they are going to have a job in a year from now. Is that pretty much?
Yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
So I would like to, see that we could expand that out to a 3-year period. We're already going to be doing it. So I would like to make a motion to approve the agreement with OWRD to authorize the chair to sign on that, to expand it out for 3 years.
And I understand our legal counsel says that that does not encumber our future boards.
That's correct. I asked him that question, and because that was a concern I had, was the whether or not that would commit a future board into an agreement, and he said that we'd be okay on that. So.
Yeah, he's not here today, but we've discussed this with him. I would want the motion, assuming you're agreeable, to be contingent upon satisfaction with that legal counsel is satisfied with the agreement, and I'm sure our fiscal office wants to be sure the legal counsel is satisfied.
I would
with
make
the
that
agreement.
Yep.
Do know, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a provision in there that the Milton Freewater issue be addressed.
And what issue is that, Chairman?
Somebody in Milton Freewater.
We've got someone there now, sir.
I know, but we understand that part of your difficulty in getting a permanent employee to work in Milton Freewater is agreeing to the 3-year contract.
Well, currently the position that's in there now is working out of the Milton Freewater office.
Right.
So, we've got her in there now. How long she'll stay, hopefully this will sustain that a little better.
That's what we were told, that because it's an uncertain position in Mountain Freewater, they go to something more permanent as fast as they can. But I just say it would include our interest in the Mountain Freewater position.
I think it would help the residents up there, the water users, like you mentioned, to know that there's some stability in that position. And I think we talked about that before. There was 2 issues. One was the limited duration, and the other issue was whether we could have somebody guaranteed to be up in Milton Freewater. And I think you've already met that, but you couldn't really commit to that till we had the limited duration piece.
Doesn't this also mean cutting the door or something of that nature?
That was a Dan Lanai.
It was something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think if we had a contract, are you familiar with this piece? If we signed a contract that there would be somebody in the Milton Freewater office at an extended duration, we'd cut a door in the, we moved, I think, are they in the new office space now, or are they still in the old one?
Greg Silbernagel, Watermaster, for the record. Yes, they are in the county building over in Milton Freewater, but they're in a side room at the moment, and you guys have updated a separate entrance to the existing building, but there's no door cut in the wall, so they still have to walk through the...
And that's what we're talking about. We would cut that door if we had an agreement signed. That was the second piece. So if we had that agreement signed, we'll keep somebody in Milton Freewater. That's when and I think that there was a contract that went out at some point. I'll have to double check with council on that, but does the contract sound familiar to either one of you guys?
The only contract that I'm aware of is the one that we provided you guys that is very similar to previous years. I'm not aware of one from the county.
Okay.
Okay, so are we satisfied that we have, the proposal is that we have a 3-year agreement developed by legal counsel in consult with the fiscal that satisfy both of them?
Yes, that would be the motion.
I don't want to do that without Doug here. So.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that.
It's not in the current one that's written here.
No, but it would be in the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is this is as it's written now.
Doesn't include that up here.
No, this is the current
one. The minutes will reflect that.
Right.
And did you already make a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I will second it.
All right. Further discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it. And we'll work on getting a modification this one and work. You want us to work directly with Doug then or through Commissioner Schaefer?
Come through me, and then we'll and I'll be in touch with you after the meeting too, so.
That sounds very good. Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Item 9, election payable.
This comes to us from Dan Lanai, Administrative Services, from Elections. Attached is a payable for envelope printing, stuffing, and mailing for the May election. The invoice is $5,691.60, which is over the $5,000 amount that he is authorized to pay, requires Commissioner approval. This is a yearly routine expense for conducting an election and has been budgeted. The requested action is to approve and sign the attached payable to BMS for the amount of $5,691.60.
So moved.
Second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
On a related item, do we know yet, there's a proposal somewhere that ballots will not require a stamp.
Oh, you mean return ballots?
Yeah,
Sure, that's clear, I don't know.
I've heard that it's being considered.
Absolutely.
What? You've heard that?
I've heard that as well.
That's being considered.
Try to get voter participation above 9%.
But is it, I'm wondering if it's a
That'd be a reverse unfunded mandate.
unfunded mandate, yeah.
It's a reverse one, though. It's giving us money, huh? Because we wouldn't have to spend for the return postage.
We don't.
That does remind me, I need to turn my ballot in.
We don't spend for the
That's right,
return
we don't.
We don't spend for it. It will be an unfunded
They
mandate.
can't
I'm
just
just
throw it-
curious if anybody knows.
They can't throw it in unaddressed and it would go to the county and be billed for the postage.
Yeah. Okay, well,
Anyway,
that was helpful. Item number 11, appointment to the Local Community Advisory Council.
an application from Trish Montgomery for appointment to the local Community Advisory Council has been received, and the request is to adopt Order BCC 2019-034. And the local Community Advisory Council is responsible for Eastern Oregon Coordinated Care Organization, for coordinating care organizations encompassing 12 counties, including Umatilla County
Right.
Healthcare.
Move a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 12, Mr. Primer.
Morning, Commissioners. Dale Primer, Director of Community Justice. First issue I have today is I have a long-term employee that's retiring effective June 30th. In fact, she was hired on the same day I was, just September 15th, 1997.
Is she the only one that's leaving?
It depends what Salem does with PERS. So as you know, as you know that folks that retire, oftentimes they will do the post-retirement hire back. I think you can do 1,039 hours per calendar year. Janet is asking to retire effective June 30, rehire June 1 for the 1,039, is that right? 1,039 from July through December, and then the following July or January 1 through June 30, 1,039. So effectively a year out. Existing pay, benefits. This is, I think, the fourth one of these that I've done since my tenure as director. There's some mutual benefit for the county. The employee becomes cheaper because you no longer pay into PERS, and you're still able to maintain an experienced person to facilitate the transition and training of the person that will be taking her position.
I received an email from her saying that this was going to be in front of us, and I told her I would vote on it. I'd vote yes with the caveat that she'd consider staying on longer than a year, but I don't think that's going to happen.
No, and these things come in when you hit the end of that 1,039, your time's up.
Yep.
And there's no takesy backsies, and so it is what it is.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve this request.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 Is that a standard form, or is it uniquely prepared for this event? Roll that up a little, would you, Melinda?
There's no attachment.
No, where it says department heard?
Ed? Oh, Hurd? Well, we were thinking about you in the cattle industry.
I just said if it's a standard form, we might, well, either way, we probably want to correct it. Do you see it down there? It's farther down. There.
Oh,
Department heard.
Norman Hurd.
Well, they probably did hear it.
There we go.
All right.
leave it to the newspaper guy.
What? Yeah. I am a newspaper guy.
I know.
All right, item 12A,
There's one more with your, there should be one more with your documents.
what?
Kathy Llewellyn. Where's
Oh.
where's this?
Oh, it's not on the agenda.
So,
We'll go down and see.
Right, that's correct.
should have been.
It was a request to, are you speaking, Jennifer? Are you flowing up here?
Here it is, here it is.
Yeah, it should have been
Okay.
with it.
Yeah, it wasn't on the agenda, that's why I missed it.
Well, it only says post PERS employment, so.
Right,
There you go.
Yes.
right. It was to be included under post-PERS employment.
Now, is there a department heard copy on that one as well?
Oh,
Is it the same? Yeah.
okay.
So Jennifer Blake, Human Resources, here to discuss the second request for post-PERS today, coming from the Sheriff's Department of Lieutenant Kathy Llewellyn at the Sheriff's Department in the Communications Center, who has asked similarly to retire effective June 30th, 2019, and work as a post-PERS retiree for an additional year, ultimately being done with employment at Umatilla County June 30th of 2020. Again, with her current benefit package.
Mr. Chair, I begrudgingly make that motion to accept that request as well.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go back to 12A. Do you want to present on that, Dale? Do you want me to introduce it?
Well, I'm not sure what we're doing. I can certainly provide background.
I'll introduce it. Okay. At our staff meeting on Monday, we discussed a document from Susan McHenry, the chair of the LIPSIC, indicating concern about the fact that the LIPSIC coordination program or grant that we currently have in place that's administered by AOC and comes with outside funding is going to be eliminated, which in turn would be eliminate Mark Royal, who's currently heading it up. There's really very strong feeling about the idea of having Mark continue his work. We visited with Mr. Primer Monday morning relative to the capacity of community corrections to take the lead in helping perpetuate that position when the funding ends in September. I communicated that to Susan McHenry, who was delighted, re-communicated yesterday to the LIPSIC board, who in turn were also delighted. The contract is now being administered by the Association of Oregon Counties. As a result of our discussion Monday morning, we discussed the possibility of contracting with Eastern Oregon Business Source to provide that service. I met early yesterday morning with Susan Bauer, the president of Eastern Oregon Business Source, to ask if they would be willing to contract for that service. It fits within their mission because it's public safety and community benefit, and so they in turn would be willing to host that position. So the proposal before you today is to authorize our moving forward with the county picking up that program once the state drops it. How's that, Dale?
Yeah, so it's not uncommon, especially in larger counties, for the counties to hire or appoint either a board or an employee to facilitate the actions of the local public safety coordinating council. I think, as you know, the local public safety coordinating council is derives its authority from this board. And then in 2015, the Criminal Justice Commission, in cooperation with the Association of Oregon Counties, received a federal grant to hire lipstick coordinators and to place them in the counties to try to facilitate more robust lipsticks around the state. We were one of those counties that participated in that grant opportunity. We initially started off with a shared position between us and Morrill County. Since that time, the difference between our two counties and the demands that we had on the position were so different, we eventually agreed to split that position into two half-time positions. Got us to where we're at. In our particular case, we've always had a fairly robust lipstick, but having somebody to manage the justice reinvestment grants, the data collection, and all of the components that come along with all of the things that now have to be managed and ran through lipstick. So when you think about that, that's our justice reinvestment, that's our drug court, that's a variety of other things where in the absence of this position would be work likely that I would have to take on, thus my interest in financially supporting it. So, and it just makes sense. I mean, and those things, in the history of all things lipstick in this county, for whatever reason, those grants have came out of my office. The management of those grants have flown out of my office. The management of the budget of those of those grants has been managed out of my office. And to have somebody who can tackle that, keep that in track, keep all the reports flowing and the data collected is certainly worth it to me. So
I've seen a letter from Susan McHenry that expounded on the value that it has been to her to have a coordinator to assume some of the responsibilities that she has given over the years, and her dedication and work has been a great deal. I mean, she's given a lot of herself and a lot of her free time to that, and she's made the comment that having Mark in that position has meant an awful lot to her. It's nice to know that you would probably spend that money anyway on having the work done.
Yeah.
And having the availability of an experienced person that has served us as a county employee previously, and then now as a contract employee, and has done an excellent job, is certainly valuable to be able to maintain that. Part of my question comes, and I think I know the answer because I was at a lipstick meeting last month when they talked about what to do when this person leaves.
Yeah.
And part of the responsibility, as I understand it, would be to establish a procedure and a means of continuing on beyond that. Is that correct?
Yeah. I think there's a variety of different models that are out there. You know, I think the position works about as well as the individual you have in it, right? So the counties that I find that are really desiring to sustain the position usually have hired, I don't know, one of them I think has a retired county commissioner, another one has a retired community corrections directors. I think those folks work well because they have the historic knowledge of how the system came to be. Mark, for example, was a community corrections director when justice reinvestment was a concept and testified in the legislature and before our legislators on why that was a good idea. He's gone through the challenges of our previous drug court and what it's taken to reestablish that. So he brings some value both to Lipstick and to me personally because, as you know, Mark was the director and the assistant director that I worked for. So having people within our system that are working in those capacities that have that historic long-term knowledge of how our system was built and what the agreements were and what our commitments were to one another between the counties and the state and our county and between counties, frankly, brings a value that is much higher than what the cost is. Now, I think if what you found is is that he's no longer interested in doing it, and we would have to evaluate what the replacement would look like, and would it bring as much value potentially as, historically in my office, I've had a program manager position. I cut that a few years ago for a variety of reasons, but prior to Mark, those would have been the classical duties of that position, would have been manage the grants and manage the data and all those different things. But in our particular case, we're fortunate based on who we have and how we've developed it and how that position has been developed based on the personalities we have involved in it. But I think given the way that it's structured now, and I do think that there's a person that Mark has been in communication with that should he desire to move and fully retire again someday, that is interested in working in our county. And I think if that were the case, that person is also a very highly qualified, competent person. So I don't know if that answers your question, Bill, but I think
it does.
Where we're at.
So on our agenda today, what's before us too?
Well, I think it's important that one of the discussions is that this position really is responsible to Susan McHenry and the Lipsick Board.
Yeah.
Would not be housed at EOBS. Susan Bauer would not supervise the position. They're only the host and accommodate the position, but it's accountable to the Lipsick Board. I was impressed yesterday watching at the Lipsick Board only the scope of people who were there.
Yeah.
From Judge
So we have a
Bauer.
pretty robust group. I would just ask that as we develop.
Not all counties are like that.
No. In fact, I think the reason why they created Lipsick's coordinators is because many were not. And that was their attempt was to get more counties to participate at the level we do. I think as you develop the contract, I would just ask that you keep me informed of what that looks like. Just, the person is housed at community corrections. We provide vehicles, and in the past we've had to enter in some MOUs, and there's some liability issues and some things like that. So the ability to provide just the basic support services that comes along with that. I think where the contract that they're currently looking at is looking at covering the employee costs of that. There's obviously some in-kind stuff that I'll have to provide in terms of travel, transportation, training, things like that we would want to make sure that we are covered in.
Let me clarify how that's going to work. I secured copies of the current contract from AOC and all the backup materials, which I had Melinda copy, which in turn I believe she has already sent to you. If not, she's in the process of sending to you. The expectation with Susan Bauer is that you'll have reviewed those, you'll sit down with her and create a proposal.
Okay.
So I want to get the we out of it quickly.
The I. Well, like I said, I didn't know how that was going to move forward. I just
rather
know the
quickly
last,
towards the you.
Yeah, the
but
last
there's there is some issue about liability and that kind of thing that we have to address. I think the actual hosting fee or facilitation fee is pretty modest. They just have to provide a few things and. So some questions that you'll want to answer after you see those materials in working the details out with her.
I just know the last time when we split the position, the car went to another. We were providing a car, and then I had to end up with MOUs and a bunch of other stuff to make it all work. I just don't want to lose the work we've done.
Right, okay. So in answer to your question, Commissioner Elfring, we made a motion that we proceed with in that general direction.
I would so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Rather nebulous motion. All right, we'll recess from our regular meeting and go into a public hearing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Robert Paul, CFO, Umatilla County. This morning there are 6 supplemental budgets before you. I will read you a summary of each. Budget Order 2019-72 for the Fair Improvement Program requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $11,000 and an increase in materials and services of $11,000. Budget Order 2019-73 Soil Probe Truck. The program requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in capital outlay of $20,000 and a decrease in contingency of $20,000. Budget Order 2019-74, Community Services Development Program, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $30,000 and an increase in materials and services of $30,000. Budget Order 2019-80, Echo Community Benefit Plan, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $20,000 and an increase in contingency of $20,000. Budget Order 2019-82, NAFA, Sheriff Special Programs, requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $5,000 and an increase in materials and services of $5,000. And Budget Order 2019-83, General Fund Emergency Management. The Emergency Management Program requires a supplemental budget to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in local revenue of $9,903, an increase in state revenue of $14,178, an increase in personnel services of $91, an increase in materials and services of $25,490, an increase in capital outlay of $25,000, and a decrease in contingency of $26,500. Are there questions?
Questions of Robert?
None for me.
Questions from the audience?
Vast as it is.
There being no questions from the audience, we will go back into our regular session in order to deliberate.
Mr. Chair, I move approval of Budget Order 2019-72.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay.
Move approval of Budget Order 2019-73.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Approval of Budget Order 2019-74.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Move approval for Budget Order 2019-80.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Move approval of Budget Order 2019-82.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Move approval of Budget Order 2019-83.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Also,
We have budget transfers. as
yes,
well.
also before you, there are 6 budget transfers. I'll read the summaries. Budget Order 2019-75, General Fund Jail. The jail program requires a transfer of appropriations to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $100,000 and a decrease in contingency of $100,000. Budget Order 2019-76, General Fund Main Street Building, Milton Free Water, requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $2,000, a decrease in contingency of $2,000. Budget Order 2019-77, General Fund Sam Cook Building, requires a transfer of appropriations to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $3,000 and a decrease in contingency of $3,000. Budget Order 2019-78, General Fund Records and Archives. The Records and Archives program requires a transfer of appropriation to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $4,000 and a decrease in contingency of $4,000. Budget Order 2019-79, General Fund Code Enforcement, requires a transfer of appropriations to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $3,000 and a decrease in contingency of $3,000. And finally, Budget Order 2019-81, General Fund Courthouse Facility Improvement, requires a transfer of appropriations to appropriate funding not known at the adoption of the budget. This requires an increase in materials and services of $28,000 and a decrease in capital outlay of $28,000. Other questions?
Mr. Chair, I approve a budget order, make a motion to approve Budget Order 2019-75.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Mr. Chair, I move approval of Budget Order 2019-76.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Make a motion that we approve Budget Order 2019-77.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Move approval of Budget Order 2019-78.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Make a motion to approve Budget Order 2019-79.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Move approval of Budget Order 2019-81.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is that it?
That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in
think
the
for the
audience have
audience?
something?
Lucky to find one.
Commissioner comments.
The only thing I want to say is it's about time that our county council has a good haircut over there.
Yes, that is appropriate.
Logistically, I'm not sure where we are today now. Our emergency preparedness director has been meeting with federal officials and was in here, was dispatched to room 114, and HR was put into room 121. However, at 1 o'clock today, we have a meeting with,
Rather than,
how many people?
my recommendation would be, well, our meeting is going to be significantly larger than what the one in 114 is now. I think we should just meet in here rather than move them again back into this room. Why don't we just have our meeting in here?
What sort of format?
Tables?
Where'd the tables go?
Yeah, I just had one table set up over there.
So Melinda may have to.
How many we expect today?
I don't know.
Let me look at my email. There's quite a few people on the email thread.
Was more than 8, we have to come back here.
Oh, it's going to be more
What?
than 8.
So this FEMA emergency management looked, they're meeting for 2 days.
I know.
Tom Roberts has the room. He took over the room and the schedule showed for 2 days. So I just told him when he moved that he may be moving back here. He said, just tell me where you want me to be. So,
Tell them where to go.
I don't know how many people are going to the meeting this afternoon.
I think 114 is a better venue for that meeting.
Because it has
For
the
our
table.
meeting?
Yes.
It doesn't matter to me. 6
So-
or 11 is in there.
Is this available for the next 2 days?
Yes.
Then why don't we notify
Come
him?
back.
Notify him that at noon,
They need to
move back in here and we'll go to 114 and he can have it for the next 2 days. How's that? Okay?
Works for me.
All right. Any other issues?
Just let you know, I had the first meeting with Cal Souther and the sheriff regarding the horses and livestock compound area, and that's moving ahead. So as soon as we have something definite, I'll bring it back to the board.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer, do you have anything for the good of the order?
No.
We certainly grateful you stopped by for a few minutes today. So, with that, we're adjourned.